say 1,000 words. I'm just a big old bad ex-outlaw biker, drug addict. Byron said he wore spandex and I wore leather. But I'm probably one of the most humble men standing before you today. I can't tell you what First Baptist means to this ministry. Byron Brown, he's more than a brother, although we're probably close in age, but he's been a real mentor to me. And I've fallen in love with every person that has came from First Baptist and from surrounding churches in the CSRA. In the beginning of our ministry, our church was a broken church. In 2006, our pastor moved us into a paradigm shift, that our church would no longer function as an inward-focused church, but it was going to be an outward-focused church, whatever it took. And in March of 2006, they said, we need an evangelist. We need someone that we can put on the street to help start bringing the people that don't know Jesus Christ, that are the looked down on in this city, to help us. And so I was put on staff in March of 2006. And with the paradigm shift, in June of 2006, 400 people walked out of our church. An assistant pastor walked out of our church that had been there for 26 years. Our church was devastated. They were broken. Physically, financially, spiritually, in all aspects. We didn't know what to do. But we were in a place where the only thing that we could do was rely on God. In October of 2006, a young lady from Nashville, Tennessee named Candy Christmas, who is a gospel singer, been tied to our church since the time she was a little girl. She came and gave a testimony of how God pulled her off the stages of Nashville to feed the poor under a bridge. And there was something that clicked in my spirit. Because I was looking desperately throughout the city. I was doing anything I could on the street to try to minister to the poor and minister to the homeless, to the broken, to those that had experienced life in the same way that I had many years of my life under addictions and bondages. And I went to Pastor and I said, I need to go to Nashville and I need to see what this thing is called, this bridge ministry. And so he sent myself and my wife, and I forgot to introduce my wife, and I'm going to do that right now. Miss Kimmy, would you just stand up? She's the backbone of my ministry. She puts up with restless hours of her husband being gone, and she started coming to church real often to work. And she said it was so she could work, but it was so she could see me. Isn't that a good one? Anyway, back to the testimony. So we went to Nashville, Tennessee. And this is what got me, is like, Miss Candy said, well, you can really relate to the people under the bridge from your lifestyle. Give your testimony while you're here tonight in Nashville. And so I stood in front of about 350 really desperate, homeless, broken men, and I gave my testimony. And when we did an altar call, and I was unprepared to do that. Isn't it good how God uses in a spare moment? He said, be instant, in season and out of season. And so he took me to Nashville, and an altar call was tremendous from my testimony, from the Spirit of the Lord working through my testimony. And the thing that grabbed my heart was there was this African-American young man, and he was about 6'10". He looked like, he was like a giant. And he had a grip around my neck, and he was squeezing me real hard, going, you've got to pray for me. I need Jesus. And so we prayed, and as we were praying, I could feel something on the top of my head. It was his snot and his tears running all around my head. And so God had anointed me that night to go into full-time ministry. And I'm telling you, I came home more broke than when I stood before you a few minutes ago. My heart was ripped out of my chest for the poor. And Miss Candy, she said, go rent a U-Haul trailer, and I'm going to fill it up. And so we got the smallest little U-Haul trailer, And she sent us home with 3 things. She sent us home with beef jerky and water and Cokes. And boy, I was like happy. I had something tangible, because at that time there was very little to spare as far as things to take to the street. And so we started a little Tuesday night Bible study in the Salvation Army shelter on Tuesday nights, and we've been doing that almost, well, it'll be 5 years this year. And that's where we started. We wanted to go introduce ourselves and meet the poor. And then on January 2007, we scraped together about 50 chairs and about 50 volunteers. And I mean, we didn't have any idea what we were getting into. And our cooking at that time, we were just like, one thing I told them, I said, we are not going to go in there and serve a bowl of soup. They can get that anywhere in town. We're going to be a ministry of meat. And so we were serving meals under a bridge in the wintertime out of a chafing dish in 20-degree wind and 30-degree weather, all right? We learned a lot of things since then, and we've grown very much. But the biggest thing that I can say is our heart's desire from the very beginning was to tear the denominational walls down in our city, because there's a spiritual stronghold over our city with our churches that they are territorial. I understood territorial when I was an outlaw biker. I knew that what was ours, and nobody was going to come, and nobody could touch our territory, and this is where we made our money, and this is what we did, and this is how we operated. I could understand the old lifestyle, but when I became a Christian, I grew up heathen. I knew nothing about God until I was 46 years old. I came to the Lord late in life. God, thank you. Thank the Lord I made it, because I really lived a horrible lifestyle before that. But to say this, that there was something I didn't understand about these churches, and so we prayed, and our prayer teams would pray, and we would do everything we would just cry out to God, God, send us some churches, we invited every church. We sent 100 letters out when we started our ministry to different churches in our city, and we got response from one, and they've been with us ever since. They were faithful. So I had one, and then I don't know exactly what happened, but Byron came, and Byron gave me inspiration, because there had been churches that had came, and they were going to do all this, and they were going to help us do these things, and they were going to grow our ministry, and they would hang around they were gone. If they couldn't come and have territorial possession of what we were doing, then they didn't really want it. There was something about the ones that were coming that were saying, well, we'll come and help, but we have to get some promotion out of it. And I tell you, the only thing that we promote under the bridge is Jesus Christ and Him crucified. And so finally here came a man, Byron Brown. And the only thing that I could see Byron Brown was that he was very faithful, and he watched every movement that I made. He would stand in the back. He was one person, I was like, he was faithful. He kept coming, and he kept coming. I go, Ron, why is that man back there always looking at the Bible when I'm preaching? And he said, because he's a Bible school teacher, and he wants to make sure you're getting your scriptures right. I said, boy, that really helps me a lot. I need that, And so we just started growing together, and he remained faithful and faithful. And there was a breakthrough when, I believe that, when First Baptist showed up, late fall last year. And all of a sudden I started seeing that there's Belvedere Baptist Church, and there's South Aiken Baptist Church, and there's this other Baptist church, and I'm going, praise God, look at this, And there's a Nazarene church, and there's the Journey Church. And all of a sudden, it seems like the prayers that we had prayed for 3.5 years were starting to come into focus. And it just changed the whole atmosphere. It actually changed my heart to a place where I was able to minister more freely to the poor. And again, the bridge ministry, I'm supposed to be talking about the bridge ministry, but this is the bridge ministry. It's all the churches and all the denominations and all of the believers coming together. And that's our heart. What we've really experienced is the poor and the broken and the battered and the looked down upon in our city. That the Scripture has also came to truth. It says that I will raise the poor out of the ashes and the ash heap, the dirt, and I will set them with princes and with kings. And what has happened is God has used the poor of the city to turn the rich upside down. Those that thought they had it all together. You know that we're not going to have it all together until we're all together with Him. Amen. And but anyway, the bridge ministry for me, has changed my life more than anything other than being married that I know of. As God working in ways that are beyond our comprehension. Last year we had the opportunity to baptize over 40 individuals in the summertime. We only do baptisms in the summertime because we don't want them to be frozen in the winter. We use a horse trough, and they like that just well. And I don't know. I had figures with me. I left them at church. We served 7,800 hot meals last year, 13,600 pieces of clothing, 800 blankets, I believe it was, and 1,000 coats. And I mean, there's just a multitude of work to do. The bulk of our work behind the scenes take place in a large warehouse off of Old Bel Air Road, and that happens every Tuesday and every Friday. And we can get you, we can get that information if there's something there. We do all kinds. We have sewing teams that make beautiful back blankets and sleeping bags, and there's just a multitude of things. But I just want to share one thing real quick. Too many times people think that they have to have, you don't have to be big in God's eyes to do big things. And one of the things that we have really learned is that God has given each one of us in this room an ability, a gift. And that we should not look at what other people have and their gifting and that they're better and they can do this or they can do that better than I can do. God has given you something very unique and something very special. And the one thing that we have found is that you don't have to do big things to make a big difference in a broken and empty vessel. When you come to the Bridge Ministry, or if you meet somebody on the street, or you're trying to minister to your neighbor maybe, one of the most simple things that we can do is make direct eye contact. We can shake hands and we can speak to other people. We can speak to this. Because when we really look at what we want in our own lives, aren't the things that we really seek from God that we say, God, we want to see your face. God, we want to hear your voice. God, we want to touch from you. You don't have to do great. You don't have to be someone behind a pulpit. You don't have to be a big name or anything else. The only thing that you have to do is have a big loving heart for those that are lost and broken. Sharing that smile and looking someone face to face that someone has totally disregarded and abandoned makes such a big difference. And so I invite you, come and check it out. The offering. You saw pictures of the poor coming and putting money in a box. And we are big into world missions. We're real big into world missions. And so we pick up the homeless and bring them to our church every Sunday morning. And we feed them breakfast and so they can sleep during the service. Not really. That's a wonderful thing about the Bridge Ministry. We feed them a really good hot meal at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That way you'll know if your preaching's any good, because if they're awake, it was good. But we bring them to church every Sunday, and 2.5 years ago, on a Sunday morning, we had a gentleman there from Australia, and we have a guy from Africa and India. We bring them to the United States during missions conferences, and this man named Jack Haynes stood in front of our whole church unaware that we had homeless people sitting all through the congregation because they just mingled through everyone. And he said, there's not a one person in this church that can't take the change out of your pocket and the dollars out of your pocket and make a change around the world and plant a church. And after that service was over, at the end of that service, 12 of those homeless guys came to Kimmy and I. And they said, one guy said, I got to go get a job so I can save lives in Africa. And they said, will you please start a donation at the Bridge? Will you take up a donation at the Bridge so we can plant one of those churches in Africa? I said, you got to be crazy. You want me to ask you for an offering? It's the hardest thing I ever did. And I went back to the Bridge Ministry the next Saturday and I presented, and they stood up and they clapped and they go, yeah. And I said, God, what you're doing is you're breaking the spirit of poverty off of these poor people. And that's you and not me, because I can't do that. I can't ask them to do that. In 2.5 years, they have planted 7 churches around the world. 5 in Africa, 1 in India, and 1 in China. And when we opened that box, They run. They take their seat, and some of them have nothing in their hand, but by faith they'll hold their hand up, and they'll say, God, put something in my hand so I can plant a church and save souls around the world. It's awesome what God's doing down there. Last Saturday we had our first choir. We only had 7 people. The lady came down and they practiced for an hour and a half, and they sounded like angels. And they stood in front of us and they sang from their hearts. And I'm telling you, that choir's going to be standing on this stage and on the stage of my church one day. And they're going to be raising up the praises to the Lord. The month of... Anything else? We will start, yes, First Baptist is going to join together with us and take up the other Saturday in June. And we're in training right now. We're in pray. We are praying. We are training. We are